Hey, welcome to Flatirons Online. So glad that you're here with us. We are right in the middle of this series called 90,000. The average person spends 90,000 hours of their life working their job. So we're going to look at what God has to say about all of that. If you have questions or need anything, you can reach out online, flatironschurch.com, or you can get us on any of our social media outlets. Thanks again for being here.
She said every time I close my eyes, I feel like I could disappear. I could overflow an ocean with the cavalcade of all my tears. And I know I sound dramatic, but that's just how it feels. She said I'm holding to the notion that I'll find something real. I just wanna be wanted. Oh, I could use a little love sometimes. I just need to be needed. Oh, I like to know I'm crossing someone's mind. I just wanna be someone that somebody needs. I just wanna be more than a drop in the sea. I just wanna. She said I'm counting up my karma and I think it's time to cash it in. So tired of living in the shadow of a mountain of what might have been. And I know I sound dramatic, but that's just how it feels. I've been looking for somebody to tell me that I'm real. I just wanna be wanted. Oh, I could use a little love sometime. I just need to be needed. Oh, like to know I'm crossing someone's mind. I just wanna be someone that somebody needs. I just wanna be more than a drop in the sea. I just wanna be wanted. Oh yeah. I just wanna be wanted. Ooh. I just wanna be wanted. I could use a little love sometimes. I just need to be needed. I like to know I'm crossing someone's mind.
What's up, everybody? How you doing this morning? Hey, you're like, something is not right now. Okay, I just want to welcome everybody from across all of our campuses, the gentlemen at God Behind Bars, and just everybody. We're glad that you're with us. And if you're wondering, like, what is happening right now, trust me, we understand. We changed things up this week only just so that we could make people who walk in late feel awkward. You know, I'm just kidding. Okay, like, we wouldn't do that, but you didn't have time to stop for coffee before you came to church. And so, you know, anyways, we are glad that you're here across all of our campuses. And like, we can see people are coming in late at Lafayette, but other campuses, you're not exempt either, okay? Like West Campus, I used to be back there. Adam, he's gonna send me texts of everybody who's walking in late. So I'm just kidding. West, that's for you. We are switching things up intentionally today. It'll make sense once we get through Ben's talk. We want to have a time on the back end where we can respond in worship. Just for this weekend, we're changing things up, and I know for those of you who like your routines, this is super hard, but just go with it with us. I've got two announcements for us, and they apply just church-wide. The first one is this. A couple months ago, our worship team released an album of songs that are inspired by what God's doing in this place and written for people who call this place their church home. And in celebration of that, we're having two album release parties, worship nights. One on October 11th, sold out, and so we're having another one on October 10th, Friday. I think that's a Thursday night. Yeah, it's a Thursday night at our Denver campus. And if you haven't been to our Denver campus, it is just an amazing old church that's been renovated to become a Flatirons. And since there are only 400 seats available, this is a ticketed event just to make sure that like all of us don't descend on the Denver campus and then they call the fire department and they shut the whole church down, okay? And so it's a ticketed event. If you're interested, go to the link that's right there, flatironsmusic.com, and you can get tickets for that. The second announcement I've got for all of us has to do with our series 90,000. And 90,000, as Ben and I have been talking about, it's the amount of hours that you and I are going to work over the course of our lifetime. And as we've talked through this series, right now I want to talk to a specific group of people and a specific person. And these are the people that for some reason or another, you're just chronically underemployed or unemployed. You just can't find a good job. You can't keep a good job. And I know that this series probably has been tough for you. I don't know what you're feeling with that, but here's what I want to tell you right now. We see you, we hear you, we are there for you, and we want to help. And we partner with this ministry called Thrive, and their whole thing is trying to help people who are chronically unemployed or underemployed find continual, solid employment. And they've got a proven system to do this. I don't need to do a sales pitch because the results just speak for themselves. But here's what they do, okay? They take relationships between future employers, potential employers, and potential employees right there. So that's the first step. The second, they do training to train people for skills they need on the jobs. And then third, they partner you up with a work mentor who's gonna walk alongside the process with you for an entire year. The process, it just works. And so if that's you or if that's somebody that you know that could really benefit from this, there are two things to do. Number one, we've got a workshop that starts the whole process out. It's right there, and it's October 14th through 17th. So if you're interested, or if you're interested in that for you or somebody else, just take a picture of that. You could send it to that person. Make sure you sign up for the workshop. That's the first step. And then the second thing, inevitably that workshop's gonna fill up. And so if you need more information, you can just check out these links right here. These links, if you have questions, info@thrivecolorado.org, or call the phone number. So take pictures of that. Let the people in your life that you care about know we see you, we hear you, we care about you, we wanna help. We are closing out our series 90,000 today. Ben's gonna close it out. This talk is just for anyone, successful or not, working or not, feel like your job's meaningful or not. This talk is for everybody. So I'm gonna pray for us, and then Ben's gonna close out our series. Let's pray. God, we're just so grateful. God, I would say that God, you don't give up on us, God, that you care about us individually. God, we know that our work matters to you. We know that what we do matters to you, but it doesn't completely matter to you. God, you don't measure us by that like we measure ourselves sometimes. And so, God, we're grateful that you measure us based on the work that your son Jesus did on the cross for us. So I pray that during this time that you would teach us, you would open our hearts, open our ears, so that we can learn something new from you today. It's in Jesus' name that we pray. Amen.
All right, hello. We good? Nice, all right, hi. So I'm Ben, I'm the teaching pastor here. Glad you're here today. Like Jesse just said, we're closing out this 90,000 series today. This is our series that we've been doing on work. Again, 90,000, that's the average amount of hours that you and I will spend at work in our lifetime, which is a lot, right? So that's 1/4 of our waking life is spent at our jobs. And so we just figured, since it consumes so much of our life, maybe we should talk about it. Like what did God create work for, and how might it play out in our lives in a healthy way? And so that's what we've been talking about in here. And I hope we've been learning cool stuff. I think we have, like how and why God made work as a gift, and how your job specifically serves the world, which God wants. Last week, Jesse talked about how, amongst other things, being patient and loving and kind and merciful. On top of all that, being great at your job is a very Jesus-like way of showing up to work. So we've been learning all this cool stuff in the middle of this series. But today, for the final week, the thing we're going to learn today is it's like what everything else rides on. Right? If we can get today right, then everything else we've talked about in this series falls into place. If we don't get today right, then it's not sustainable. And that's because today we're talking about the fact that who we are without work matters. Who we are outside of work matters, meaning we have to know our true identity. And if we do that, everything else falls into place. The truth, though, is that we start to lose our true sense of identity at a very early age. We start to misunderstand who we are, and we get these bad identities that we take on throughout our life. I mean, this starts really early on when we're young. It's that phase of life, everyone's been through it, you've been through it, everyone has been through this phase of life. Starts when you're little. My kids, two oldest kids, Emery and Micah, they're 6 and 4, and they're kind of entering into this phase right now. But it's that moment when you're a little kid and something clicks in your brain, And you think to yourself, you're like, maybe if I'm mean to someone else, that will make me feel better about who I am. And so you start trying to be mean, but you're a little kid, and so you're clumsy at it, right? You're not really great at being mean yet. You don't know how to like really stick it to someone yet. And so what do? You name call, right? That's always kind of the first step into learning how to be mean to other people. You call them names, but you're not even good at that yet, right? That's what Emery and Micah are going through. They're in this phase where they'll get mad at each other, and then they call each other names, but the names that they call each other aren't even actually very mean. They're just weird or a collection of gross words that they know, you know? And so they'll get like so mad at each other, and it'll escalate and escalate until eventually, usually Micah will explode, and it's genuine anger. Like you can tell he really feels angry, and he'll explode, and he'll go, hey, Em, you're just a... And you can tell he's got nothing. You know, he's like, what's something mean I could say? And he goes through the catalog of gross words that he knows. And he goes, Em, you're just and this is one he's used before. He goes, you're just a stinky foot brain. And then he kind of mic drops it, you know. Whenever he does this, there are 3 emotions that flash through his face immediately, like in the span of 1 second. The first is pride, which I just talked about. He's like, yeah, got her. The second one is sadness, because he's actually a sweet kid. So you can tell he feels immediately like, why did I say that to my sister, my kin, my blood, you know? And then the third one is always fear. You know, did dad hear that? Because I'm gonna be in trouble. And he is in trouble when he says that, but I have a hard time disciplining our kids when they do stuff like that, because I mainly am just trying not to laugh the whole time, you know? I have to stop myself from pulling him aside and being like, okay, Micah, first of all, high five. You know, that was a very creative burn. You know, second of all, let's not call each other names. So we do this at a very young age. We just start calling each other names. You know, and it starts with these dumb, weird names like I just talked about, but also we're little kids, and so they still hurt. You know, we don't have the mental capacity to be like, that name doesn't make sense, I'm fine, right? We don't have that, and so it hurts, genuinely hurts. When you think about what we're doing, we start doing this to each other when we're like 4, and when you think about what we're doing to people, it's actually kind of messed up. There's this human nature thing inside of us, this beast inside of us that at an early age says, you know what? I'm going to remove your true identity, and I'm going to put a bad identity onto you. That's what we're doing when we're name calling. So, you know, Micah is saying, essentially, he goes, you're not Emery to me. You know, you're not an individual. You're not a valuable person in my life. You're not Emery. Instead, you are a stinky foot brain or whatever name that he fills in there. We're removing people's true identities, and we're replacing them with bad identities. Right? Of course, right now, I'm talking about the more, you know, innocent, juvenile form of name calling. But at the same time, you and I, we have been called a name, several of them. There were ways in which we were defined, usually at a very early age, and they've stuck, haven't they? You know, all of us have this in some form or fashion, these definitions of who we are, these bad identities that we took on, and they're not cute, and they're not funny, and they still hurt to this day. And we have spent a lifetime either A, trying to prove those names wrong, or B, we've just sunk into the defeat of those names. I'll explain this. I'll give you an example. I'll give you one of mine. It's a name that I took on at an early age, a bad definition of who I am. Mine is, I am weak. I am weak. I grew up shorter and scrawnier than all the other kids my age. And so, you know, it's like, especially middle school, you hit middle school and all the other guys are playing football and they're in the gym, they're lifting weights, they're getting big, they're growing beards. And I was always like kind of in the corner going like, would anyone like to start a punk band with me or whatever? I would get bullied and picked on and stuff too. And so that was a name I took on at an early age. I am weak. And it still hurts to this day. I hate to admit it, but I've spent the better part of my 34 years of my life trying to prove that name wrong, to prove that I'm not weak. I didn't do that through physical accomplishment. Instead, I looked to other accomplishments in my life. You know, to prove that I'm not weak, I got to be the funniest person in the room or the smartest person in the room. I got to be the most creative or the hardest working person. It's actually kind of interesting because I struggle with depression, which I've talked about in here before. But it's interesting because my depression is one that doesn't feel like sadness for very long. Because in my mind, sadness is weakness. I don't want to be weak. And so when depression hits, anyone who has it, you know what that feels like. It just comes out of nowhere, and it's this heavy thing that settles on your shoulder, this heavy sadness. When that hits, it doesn't take me long to go, nope, I'm not sad because that's weak, and I'm not weak. Instead, I'm just pissed. I'm angry. because angry feels stronger than sadness. That's mine. I am weak. It's one of mine. What's yours? We all got these bad names when we were younger, these bad identities we've been carrying around, and it's stuck with us, so what's yours? I don't know what yours is. Maybe dad didn't stick around, or mom didn't stick around, or neither one of them stuck around. So you got a name at an early age, right? I am what? I am unwanted. You spent your whole life, it's just like the song we just listened to, I just want to be wanted. So you spend your whole life, overcompensating, trying to prove that that's not who you are, or you just sink into the defeat of it, right? Yeah, that's who I am. That's all I'm worth. I'm unwanted. If that's you and that hits the nail on the head for you, I'm sorry, because that sucks. What is the bad identity you've taken on? Maybe when you were younger, maybe recently, but you fight against it all the time. Like, what is your I am statement? I am ugly, I'm forgettable, I'm easy, I'm annoying, I'm stupid, I'm worthless, I'm a bad parent, I'm a bad spouse. What is yours? And whatever it is, I'm sorry, because that sucks. But I do want you to think of it right now. I am what? How would you fill in that blank with your bad identity that you've been carrying around for years? Think of it right now, and then keep it locked up in your brain, all right? Because we're going to come back to it at the end of this thing. So why am I talking about any of this stuff in the first place on the final week of our series 90,000, which is supposed to be about work? Well, here's why I'm talking about it. It's because when we're kids, we try to prove those names wrong by acting out or standing out or dishing it back or whatever. But then we grow up. And when we grow up, the number one way we try to prove those names wrong is through our work. All right, to remind you of the broader definition of work in this series, I don't just mean your career and jobs. I do include that, but I just mean your accomplishments. We're trying to prove those names wrong through our accomplishments. Maybe you're not earning a paycheck, but you're trying to shed those bad identities through what you can accomplish in grad school or accomplish as a parent or accomplish through your hobbies. You're trying to be a great artist, a great photographer, a great hunter, whatever that is. We got these names, these bad identities that we're trying to get rid of, and we're looking to our own accomplishments to rename us. In other words, we need work to tell us who we are. Some of us in the room might be skeptical. That's cool, I get that, right? Where you're sitting in here, you're going, sounds like a bit of a stretch. I don't think I'm trying to find my identity in my work, in my accomplishments. I truly hope that's the case. I think most often we are. We just don't realize we're doing it. So let me give you a couple signs of whether or not a person is looking for their identity in their own accomplishment. You can just see if this sounds familiar or not. Right? The first sign that we're looking for our identity and our accomplishments is this. When we need work or accomplishment to tell us who we are, success goes to our heads. Goes straight to our heads, inflates our heads. We get a sense of pride. Why? Well, because we need success at work. We need the accomplishment. We need the recognition. We need the rewards and the results, and we need the promotions. Why? Because we need to be renamed. And we're looking to our accomplishments to do that for us. And so when we are recognized or celebrated or promoted, it's like this adrenaline rush, right? It feels so good. And we tell ourselves that's what we needed. And we tell ourselves, we go, look, there's the proof. I'm not weak. I'm not stupid or unwanted. I'm not a failure. Why? Because I'm a success. And so success becomes addictive. This is why we've become workaholics. Right? I'm one, so there's no judgment from me right now. But let's face it, this is why we become workaholics. Why? Well, because without work, I don't know who I am. I need work, and we need the success at work, and so we work harder, and we work, later, and we neglect our families, and we kill ourselves trying to get that one last addicting shot of success into our arms. We're looking at our jobs and our accomplishments, and we're saying, please work. Tell me that I'm not a failure, please. When we need work to tell us who we are, success goes to our heads. Another sign that we're looking for our identity in our accomplishments is how we handle failure. Because when we need work to tell us who we are, failure goes straight to your heart. Right? That's why the criticism or the demotion or the layoff feels so devastating. That's why when we fail at work, we think we are failing as people. Why? Well, because our jobs and our identity are inseparable now. And so when work is going poorly, we take it to heart. Our actual identities take a hit. For example, when you reach December, right around the corner, right? And you realize you've not met your quota, all all right, or you've not covered your overhead, or you're not getting your year-end bonus, what do you do with that information? Does it go to your head? Do you think about it? And do you tell yourself, okay, not good, but what have I learned? How do I adapt? How do I adjust? Or does it go straight to your heart? If you're anything like me, go straight to your heart. There's no learning or adapting or adjusting. Instead, I'm just telling myself, Ben, what have you done? And I'm telling myself, look, this is the proof. You are weak, you are stupid, you are a failure. They were right about you. They've been right about you all along. Failure goes to our hearts because we need success. We're looking to our jobs and we're looking to our accomplishments and we're saying, please work, tell me I'm a success. When we need work to tell us who we are, success goes to our heads and failure goes to our hearts. One more sign that we're looking for our identity in our accomplishment, and then we'll move on, all right? It's this: when we need work to tell us who we are, we can't stop comparing ourselves to other people. We can't quit. Maybe this sounds familiar. Maybe you're in sales, you've had your best year yet, right? But guess what? Joe Schmo with the $1 million smile down the hall, he did more than you, right? So here's you, best year yet, here's Joe Schmo. What are you? Not good enough. Maybe you're a stay-at-home mom. You finally got the kids in bed, and sure, the place is a wreck, and sure, you didn't get a chance to give them a bath, but, hey, we had a good day. We took them to the zoo. It was fun. So you get a glass of white wine, you sit down on the couch to kind of unwind, you open up Instagram, and guess what? There's Nancy Fancy with the schmancy house down the street, right? And guess what she did? She took her kids to the zoo, and she cleaned her house, and she got them bathed, and she taught her toddlers arithmetic or whatever that day, right? She did great. And so you had a really good day, but here's Nancy Schmancy who's just killing it at motherhood. And so what are you? I'm not good enough. When we need work to tell us who we are, we can't stop comparing ourselves to other people. We start to read other people's success as a failure of our own. Just so you know real quickly, to let you a little bit into my life, I want you to know I'm not exempt from this by any means. I am always going to struggle with finding my identity in being a pastor and being a teacher. And a couple of years ago, I was like cruising down that spiral. Because one thing that's weird about my job is that these sermons, they get posted online for thousands of people all over the world to watch, and they leave comments on these videos. And so it's weird because I basically get like reviewed by people I'll never meet in my entire life, right? Just like you'd review a movie or an album. And when I first started this job as a teaching pastor a few years ago, I found myself getting on those videos and reading all of those comments, all right? Some of them were good for a laugh, because people say hilarious stuff. My favorite is people always comment and say like, I've been going to this church for a long time, I love it, but then they can't get any of the pastors' names right. That happens more than you'd think. So people will say like, Flatirons is wonderful, I've been going here for 20 years, and the lead pastor, Todd Bergen, is a wonderful man. And you're like, how do you not know his name's Jim? So I've been here for 20 years. So there's funny stuff in there, but usually I would go to these videos because I want to know if I'm being successful. So I go read the comments, and there'd be dozens of these comments like, great job, an incredible teaching, Pastor Ben. What would happen? If I'm being honest, it would go to my head. It would feel really good. I would start to feel pride, and I would tell myself, I would go, look, there it is, there's the proof. You're not weak, you're not a failure. Then there'd be dozens of these comments, and then John Kay from Detroit or wherever would chime in, and he'd be like, who is this guy? He looks like he's 16, I'm never gonna listen to him again. And what would happen? It would go right to my heart. It would feel really, really bad, and I would feel sick inside, and I would tell myself, there it is, like there's the proof, right? You are weak, you are a failure. And so what would I do? I'd go look for some more nice comments. It sounds disturbing because it is, all right? And I knew that. It was like this emotional, disturbing roller coaster of like, okay, you're doing a good job. Oh, no, you're not. Oh, you're doing a good job. No, up and down, up and down. Why? Because at that point in my life, I was looking to my job to tell me who I was. I needed it. What I was doing, which is sick when you think about it as a pastor, I was looking at my church, Flatirons, and saying, please, Flatirons, tell me I'm not a failure. And it was crippling. Till about a year ago, God like smacked me in the head with some common sense, and he was like, just don't ever read those things again, you doof. Like, why are you doing this to yourself? So I haven't. I don't touch those things anymore. I don't read any of that stuff anymore. It's not healthy for me. Why? Because I was looking for my entire identity in this, my job. And we're all doing this in some form or fashion with our accomplishments. What does that look like for you? We were called these names when we were young. We're carrying around these bad identities, and we're looking to our accomplishments to rename us. Please give me a new identity. Please work. Please, my own accomplishments, tell me who I am. We need work to tell us who we are. Let's face it, it's letting us down. Work and accomplishments, the success, the failure, it's come and go. Success is here today, gone tomorrow. Right? The big wins, they're few and far between. And so when it comes to our accomplishments, they're going like this, and so are our identities. And so what do we do about this? What is the solution here? Well, the solution is that you and I need something or someone who is stronger than and louder than the voices of our accomplishments or the voices of the people who have hurt us in the past, our parents, our siblings, whoever name called you and gave you a bad identity. We need someone who is stronger and louder than all of those voices to tell us who we truly are. In other words, who we are without work matters. We got to shed these bad identities, but to do that, we have got to look for our identities in something other than our own accomplishments. If we can get that right, everything else falls into place. Success and failures just become indicators, and that's it. They don't affect us. Why? Because we know who we are. Who we are without work matters. So who is the voice louder and stronger than the ones who have name-called us and given us bad identities? Well, cutting through the deafening roar of accusations and your success and your failure and the names that you've been called and your accomplishments or your lack of them, cutting through that deafening roar is one constant voice. And he says this, "But now thus says the Lord." So here's what God says to you. He who created you and he who formed you. He says, "Fear not, stop being scared because I have redeemed you and I have called you by your name. I don't call you by the names you call yourself. I call you by your name, and you are mine." For decades now, we've had these bad identities that we're carrying around with us. We're looking to our accomplishments to prove them wrong, and meanwhile, we have this God who says, "I don't evaluate you. I don't measure you based on your performance. I measure you based on Jesus' performance," which means I don't call you weak. I don't call you stupid or bad father or worthless or forgettable. I don't call you any of those names. I call you by your name. I just call you Ben, and you are mine. What do we need? We need Jesus to tell us who we are, and we have to look to what he has accomplished, not our own accomplishments, to find our own identity. So what did he accomplish for us, and who does he say we are? In terms of what he accomplished for us, that's what our whole next series is about. Right? We're going to spend a couple weeks leading up to baptism weekend talking about a few of the foundational things that Jesus has done for us and what that means in our lives. But for today, just to kind of get us all on the same page, here's what we need to know. Here's what Jesus has done for you, all right? He's taken every single one of your failures, everything terrible you've done in the past or today or in the future, all of your guilt and your shame and your selfishness, you name it. He's taken every single one of your failures. The Bible word for that is sin. And he put your sin to death when he was nailed on a cross. Now, because your sin and failures are not a factor in that relationship anymore, what Jesus does is he speaks up and he says, "From here on out, I reserve the sole right to define you. From here on out, I am the only one who gets to call you names." What are the names that he calls us? Well, it might sound familiar from a few weeks ago, but it's important, so we're going to drive it home. Bible says this, "How great is the love the Father has lavished on it." So how awesome is it that God would say this about us, that we should be called children of God, and that is what we are. That's our true identity, and if we could start there by looking to his accomplishments, not our own, to figure out who we are, everything else in life begins to fall into place. When you think about work, for example, success isn't a lifeline anymore. It's not addicting anymore. It's just an indicator that you're on the right track, so keep on trucking. Right? Failure doesn't become heartbreaking and crushing anymore. It's just an indicator that you're on the wrong track, right? So learn and adapt and adjust and keep on trucking. Then the comparison game becomes a moot point. Why? Because I know who I am. I don't need to compare myself to anyone. We know that we're the sons and the daughters of a good and a living God. If we can know who we are and start there, everything else, work and life in general, begins to fall in place. If that feels abstract, You're like, how would knowing that and starting there and living out of that place change my life? I want to tell you a story that I think will kind of tie this in for us. So again, my two oldest, all right, Emery and Micah. Emery is 6, Micah is 4, okay? The other day, we're doing a puzzle. Last week, we're doing this puzzle together. If I'm being honest, if I'm being for real with you, like I hate doing puzzles with my kids. I just don't like it. It's like torture to me. I'm constantly fighting from, biting my tongue. And what I want to be is like, really guys, like, you're trying to put an edge piece in the middle of this bad boy? Like that's how this whole thing's gonna go for hours? So I think hell will just be like, doing puzzles with small children for eternity. So, but I put on a smile and I'm doing this puzzle with the kids, okay? It's a 100-piece puzzle, dinosaurs, all that good stuff. Micah, remember he's 4, he's younger. Micah is, first of all, super smart. He's ahead of the curve there. I don't know where he got that from. Super smart. Also, he's done this puzzle like 1,000,000 times. And so he's cruising, right? He's just click, 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 putting this puzzle together. Now, Em, she's 6, remember, she's older. She's struggling with it. Can't seem to get any of the puzzle pieces in. She's also like turning them upside down and folding them. She just can't get this puzzle figured out. She's getting really frustrated and it builds. And finally, she just kind of huffs and she points at the puzzle box and she goes, Dad, what's that number mean? And on the puzzle box in the corner was one of those ages 3+ tags. So I explained it to her. I'm like, well, Emery, that means that this puzzle is good for anyone who's 3 years old or older. And you could see wheels turning in her head. And you could see her going, this is a puzzle for 3-year-olds, and I'm 6, and I can't do it, right? You could see it, and you see her eyes water up. You see her thinking so hard, and then she just starts crying, and she breaks. In the moment, honestly, it broke my heart as her dad. Because it was like, she's too little to articulate it, but I know that what she's feeling is stupid. And I know that feeling. I hate it. One of my greatest fears. I don't want to be the stupidest person in the room. And you could just see, in this little 6-year-old girl, you could see this human nature bent towards comparison. She's comparing herself to her brother Micah, and she's not measuring up. You could see this human nature bent towards finding a sense of self, a sense of who you are in what you can accomplish. I'm the 6-year-old who can't do a 3-year-old puzzle. I'm not good enough. Now, by no means am I a perfect dad, very far from it. But from my point of view, as her father, do you think my evaluation of Emery's identity goes down because she can't do the task at hand? Do you think I define her or want her to define herself based on what she can and cannot do? And do you think I start calling her names like stupid and not good enough and bad daughter? No. Why? Because she's mine. That's my kid. That's my Emery. She is my daughter. I am her father. I love her no matter what. She's good enough for me. That's that. Because of Jesus, you and I have the perfect version of that. When it comes to our relationship with our God, who is our Father, he looks at you, he says, I don't call you by the names you call yourself. I call you by your name, and you are mine. You are my son. You are my daughter. I am your father. I love you no matter what. You're good enough for me, and that is that. And if we could start there, everything else begins to change in life. And so here's what I want to do today. I want to practice starting there. Practice starting with that true identity for ourselves. One of my favorite descriptions of who God is, I love this one. It's in Psalm 3. And Psalm 3 says this, says, you, O Lord, are a shield about me. So you're a protector, you protect me. It says you're my glory, which means you're the most valuable thing that I have in my life. And then the end, I love it. It says, and you're the lifter of my head. And it's this image. It's this picture of God as a perfect father walking up to his sons and daughters of any age, that's us, walking up to us when our heads are hung in defeat, and it's this picture of him putting his finger under your chin and lifting your head back to true confidence and back to true security and back to true identity. And so here's what we're gonna do right now. I'm gonna ask that everybody close your eyes and then hang your head. Maybe bow your head like you're gonna pray or put your head in your hands. Just assume the posture of defeat. Remember at the beginning of this thing, I told you to think of the bad identity that you've been carrying around your whole life. I want you to think about it right now. Listen, I'm not gonna leave you in this place, but we gotta start here. Think about it. What name have you been called, or what name have you called yourself for years now? I am what? I am stupid. I'm worthless. I'm weak. I'm unimportant. I'm unwanted. I'm ugly, unlovable. I'm a terrible dad. What is it? What's your bad identity? Think about it right now. In this moment, I want you to say it to yourself in your head like you've said for years. And I want it to sink in, the fact that you have been carrying that bad identity around for decades. And now here's what we're going to do. Keep your eyes closed, keep your head hung. I'm going to tell you what God says about you. I'm going to walk us through our true identities based on what Jesus has accomplished for us. This is some of the best news I can ever imagine sharing with you, and I'm going to share it now. And here's what I'm going to ask you to do, all right? You keep your eyes closed and your head hung. When you are ready to listen to a voice that is louder and stronger and clearer than the one that has defined you for your entire life, when you are ready to listen to God's definition of who you are as opposed to your own, you're simply going to open your eyes and you're going to lift your head. All right, this is what God says about you. So because of Jesus, God says you are forgiven. All right, you are not your guilt and shame. You are not defined by your past. You are not your mistakes and your outright failures. They don't factor anymore, and that's because God says you are forgiven. Because of Jesus, God says you are free, which means you are not a slave to the bad identity that you've been carrying around for years. You are not a slave to your family history, and you're not a slave to your success or your failures or your accomplishments, and that's because God says you are free. Because of Jesus, God says that you're treasured and you're valued, which means you're not forgettable, you are not overlooked, and you are not unwanted. God says you are treasured and you're valued. Because of Jesus, God says you are here on purpose and you are here for a purpose, which means you are not a mistake. You are not some accident of the cosmos. Your life is not inconsequential in this universe, and that's because God says you are here on purpose and for a purpose. Because of Jesus, God says you're loved. No, you're not hated, and you're not irredeemable, and you're not too far gone, and that's because your God says you are loved. And then last one for today, because of Jesus, God says you are worth dying for. Which means no, you are not worthless. You are worth a very great price, and he paid it. And that is because God says you are worth dying for. Now everyone open your eyes and lift your heads. Look at those words on the screen. Look at that definition of who you are, and listen to me when I tell you that is who you are. That is who you are. Yes, when you are single and you're lonely and you're eating dinner alone again, that's who you are. That is who you are when you're married with kids and you're claustrophobic. That's who you are. That is who you are when you're promoted. That is who you are when you're laid off. That is who you are when you're addicted and afflicted and ashamed. That is who you are when you are ignored and abused and refused. That is who you are. No ifs, ands, or buts. It's end of story. It's finished. That is who you are, and that's that. When we hang our heads in defeat, we don't have a God who puts his finger in our chest. We have a God who puts his finger under our chins, and he lifts our heads. And he says, eyes on me, and head high and shoulders back. I am your confidence. I am your strength. I am your victory. And I am the one who gets to tell you who you are. And I say, you are mine. You are my son. You are my daughter. I am your father. I love you no matter what. Don't forget it. Don't forget who you are. Don't forget who I am. Chin up, heads high, and eyes on him. And so we're going to keep practicing this for a few minutes. We're going to pass out communion, all right? I don't want you to take it yet. I'll walk us through that in a second. But as we're passing out communion, we're going to practice this keeping our heads held high thing. The band is going to play some verses from a song. Don't even sing them yet. Just listen to it. Listen to the words. Read the words on the screen and reflect. Chin up, heads high, eyes on him. The words of this song, they explain exactly what Jesus has accomplished for us so that you and I could be called sons and daughters of God. So just read the lyrics and listen and say thanks for what God has done for you. Chin up, head high, eyes on him. He is greater than your successes. He is stronger than your failures, and he is louder than the voices that have tried to define you for years. So chin up, head high, eyes on him. And in a minute, I'll come back up here and we'll take communion.
In the darkness, we were waiting, without hope, without light, till from heaven you came running. There was mercy in your eyes to fulfill the law and prophets. To a virgin came the word, from a throne of endless glory to a cradle in the dirt.
So everyone stand up. The words of that song and the words of the songs we're going to continue singing, they explain what Jesus has done for you and is finished. And because he's accomplished that for us, he looks at us and he goes, I reserve the sole right to tell you who you are. I get to call you names. And the identity that he gives us is very, very good. And so chin up and heads high and eyes on him. In a minute, we're gonna take communion, and there's nothing magical about communion, right? It's symbolic, it's a reminder. It's a reminder that Jesus thought you were worth dying for, and so he did. When we take the bread, it's a reminder of Jesus' body, which was broken, and it was beaten up, and it was nailed to a cross for us. And the juice is a reminder. It's a reminder of his blood that was poured out, and it was spilled, and it was crusted up in the dirt under the cross for us. It's our greatest victory. And when we take communion, it's our way of looking at Jesus and saying, we won't forget it. We will remember what you've done for us. We will remember who you are, and we'll remember who you say we are because of that. So I'm gonna pray. And then after I pray, together, as this Flatirons family, this ragtag group of messy and broken and figuring it out, but forgiven and free and valued and loved people, we are going to take communion. And we're gonna remember. And then after that, we're gonna stay here. Instead of rushing out the door to go to the next thing, we're just gonna take a few minutes to reflect, and we're gonna tell God thank you by singing these songs together. So pray with me. God, thank you so much for everyone sitting in these rooms, all these different campuses, sitting at home, online, watching on the computer. God, thank you for these people. God, we have been carrying around bad identities for our entire lives, these bad names that are heavy on our shoulders, these I am statements. God, we've been carrying these around our whole lives. We've been looking to our own accomplishments to try to rename us, and meanwhile, you sit here going, let me rename you. God, in the midst of these names and these bad identities, God, you speak out and you speak truth, and you say, because of Jesus, we're free, we're forgiven, we're treasured and valued, we're loved, and we were worth dying for. God, we thank you for that. God, what I'm asking for right now is something that no sermon could ever be articulate enough to do. No song could ever be beautiful enough to do. God, I'm asking you to do something that only you can do, which is take that truth from our heads and sink it down into our hearts. God, redefine us. Help us figure out what it looks like to live out of that true identity, to trust you in that. God, can you please do that right now over the next few minutes, over the next week, and over the rest of our lives? God, I thank you so much I thank you so much for your son, Jesus Christ, who makes all this possible for us. And in a minute, it's him we're going to remember. God, we thank you for him, and it's in his holy name that we pray. Amen.
In the morning that you rose, all of heaven held its breath, till that stone was moved for good, for the Lamb had conquered death. And the dead rose from their tombs, and the angels stood in awe, for the souls of all who come to the Father are restored, and the church of Christ was born, and the Spirit lit the flame. Now this gospel truth of all shall not kneel, shall not faint. By his blood and in his name, in his freedom I am free. For the love of Jesus Christ, who has resurrected me. Sing praise the Father.
So don't let your heart be troubled. Hold your head up high, don't fear no evil. God is madly in love with you. So take courage, hold on, be strong. Remember where our help comes from. Oh, 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 Jesus, Jesus, our redemption, our salvation is in His blood. Jesus, light of heaven, friend forever, His kingdom come. So don't let your heart be troubled. Hold your head up high, don't fear no evil. Fix your eyes on this one truth. God is madly in love with you. So take courage, hold on, be strong. Remember where our help comes from. Oh, oh, oh,
Swing wide, all you heavens, let the praise go up as the walls come down. All creation, everything with breath, repeat the sound. All His children, clean hands, pure hearts, good grace, good God. His name is Jesus. Swing wide, all you heavens, let the praise go up as the walls come down. All creation, everything with breath, repeat the sound. All His children, clean hands, pure hearts, good grace, good God. His name is Jesus.
swing wide, oh swing wide, all you heavens, just let the praise go up as the walls come down. All creation, everything with breath, repeat the sound. All His children, clean hands, good hearts, good grace, good God. His name is Jesus. Yeah. Oh, 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 swing wide,
but he brought me in. Oh, his love for me. Oh, his love for me. Sing this out. Who the sun sets free, oh, is free indeed. Come on. I'm a child of God. Yes, I am. Free at last, he has ransomed me. His grace runs me. While I was a slave to sin, Jesus died for me. Yes, he died for me. Who the Son sets free, oh, is free indeed. I'm a child of God. Yes, I am. In my Father's house, there's a place for me. I'm a child of God. Yes, I am. These are your words. Sing these out. I am chosen, not forsaken. I am who you say I am. You are for me, not against me. I am who you say I am. I am chosen, not forsaken. I am who you say I am. You are for me, not against me. I am who you say I am. Oh, I am who you say I am. Who the Son sets free, oh, is free indeed. I'm a child of God. Yes, I am. In my Father's house, there's a place for me. I'm a child of God. Yes, I am. In my Father's house, there's a place for me. I'm a child of God. Yes, I am chosen, not forsaken. I am who you say I am. You are for me,